Welcome to my Claim Your Worthiness podcast, intimate conversations with Gail Jones. We all have a safe place within to create anew. In each episode, I hope to add to your inner sanctuary to strengthen the belief in yourself and your dreams. Claiming our worthiness sets the foundation for centering us back into our greatness. From this foundation, we create our most amazing lives. I'll be sharing insights and resources from my own journey and from others who are transforming their lives. Lean in and receive the wisdom shared. You are worthy of having this special time with yourself. Hello, I'm Gail Jones, host of Claim Your Worthiness podcast, here today with Dr. Joe Rubino. Dr. Rubino, CEO of the Center for Personal Reinvention, is acknowledged as one of the world's foremost experts on the topic of elevating self-esteem for adults and children. He is a life-changing personal development and success coach on how to restore self-esteem, achieve success, maximize joy in relationships and fulfillment in life, and skyrocket productivity. He is known for his groundbreaking work in personal and leadership development, building effective teams, enhancing listening and communication skills, life and business coaching, and optimal life planning. His 12 best-selling books and audio programs are available in 23 languages and in 58 countries. Dr. Joe's vision is to impact the lives of at least 20 million children and 20 million adults. You can learn more about his life-changing work at the selfesteembook.com. Welcome, Joe. I'm thrilled to have you here.
Thrilled to be with you, Gail. Thank you for having me.
It is such perfect timing with all the recent news about the mental health crisis for teens and stories of more suicides from college athletes and the impact of the pandemic on our young children. But before we delve deep into these issues and your expertise on building high self-esteem, can you share with our listeners today a time in your life when you felt unworthy and had to transform your life to become the leader you are today?
Gail, we all have those episodes from our early childhood, usually before the age of 6, where we make something up about ourselves and about others and about the world in general that doesn't support us. And then we live our lives based on these lies moving forward. For me, that episode I was 5 years old, playing at the schoolyard with some of my friends. And there were some teenagers that came down and they decided to have a game of football, and they decided to use me as their football. So they tossed me around one to the other. One of them dropped me, hit my head on the concrete, and went home with a concussion, big egg on my head, crying. And at the time, I made up that I was small and insignificant, that people were mean and cruel, and the world was a dangerous place. So I went through most of my life up until about the age of 37, believing that there was something fundamentally wrong with me, that people would beat me up at an early age of 5 years old. And I lived my life avoiding people. So I would cross the street when I saw someone that I knew, put my head down, and I soon got the reputation of being quite a snob. Although it wasn't because I was a snob, it was because I was afraid of being hurt. And it wasn't until I reinvented myself at the age of 37, where I immersed myself into a 10-year rigorous personal development program, that I discovered that we all have these episodes where we make something up about ourselves that doesn't support us and make something up about other people in the world.
How did that manifest in your life? I know understanding crossing the street, but how did it manifest like in relationship and career, having these limiting beliefs holding you back?
The way it manifested was I became an introvert. I avoided people. I studied a lot because that's how I created a winning formula to win in the world. And I did anything that I could to avoid getting into situations where I would be uncomfortable. So I would avoid parties. I'd avoid social gatherings. I just became a recluse pretty much at a young age. And there was great cost to that. But I didn't have many friends, didn't feel good about who I was, not proud of the person that I was. And all of that just exacerbated as episode after episode would occur. What happens is we develop evidence.
Right.
And the evidence says, this is just the way I am. And here's another piece of evidence that supports this. And before we know it, we lose sight of the fact that we made it up in the first place, or We created some interpretations that didn't support us,
Right.
and it becomes our truth. Even though it's a falsehood,
Right.
we can recognize that we made all of this up, that
Mhm.
we can reinterpret our lives, and we can absolutely reinvent ourselves.
Though, especially those ages 0 to 6, the children don't have the discernment skills to know it's not them. I think it's exciting that we can rewire the brain, and you did, and now you're a world leader. So bring us back to 37 when you started reinventing yourself.
It began with a 1-year program where I met 4 times a year for 4 days with a group of coaches and people like myself who were in this process of reinvention. And that process continued over a 10-year span. And what I did was not only discover the things that didn't support me, but I started to become a student of personal development. I started to ask myself, who am I being that this chronic condition is showing up around me?
Mhm.
And what's working and what's missing in my life that, if put into place, would support me to experience life differently, to be happy, to be fulfilled, to be abundant, to be successful, all the things that we all want in life. It's a process where, instead of encountering problems where they shut you down and they put you back to zero, they cause you to quit or question your commitment, you instead follow your commitment. You instead know what you're up to in life, and you know that it's all good. It's all there as a gift and a blessing.
Mhm.
And your job is to look for the gift, look for the blessing in all the adversity that comes your way.
Sure.
And so when we can teach children this, and they can have the tools to know that life is filled with challenges, and the challenges are there for your edification, for your emotional growth.
So it's shifting that thought that these problems are a punishment versus an opportunity to really grow and learn.
Yeah, it's interpreting life in a way that is void of the reactive emotional mood that drives us typically. We're all driven by an emotional mood. And this is an important thing for children to realize too, because, and adults, early on in life, when that formative moment happens, when the stress is on, the heat is on,
Mhm.
and we make something up that doesn't support us about ourselves, we tend to gravitate toward one of a number of moods. The 4 most common are anger, sadness, fear, and anxiety.
Mhm.
Those are the 4 most common, but there are several variations.
Sure.
And what happens is that in times of stress, we become emotionally reactive. People with anger do so because they've learned that they can dominate others. They can avoid being controlled by them
Sure.
when they're angry. They can be forceful in the moment. They can have a justification for acting in a way that maybe they would do ordinarily without the anger. People who are sad have a tendency to feel sorry for themselves, and they suppress the anger, and so they go to sadness. Now, it's been shown that about 350 million people are addicted to sadness. These are clinically depressed people
Mhm.
who create a life such that they attract into their lives people that make them sad.
Right.
They attract situations where they get to be sad. They
Would you say they live as victims?
All of these moves are an indication of victim status. Same with fear. People who live in fear, 24% of women, 16% of men, they're addicted to fear. And anxiety rules so many people, where when you're anxious, it wasn't my fault I was anxious. I couldn't act in a way other than allowing my fear to dictate my response. If I was sad, it wasn't my fault. I was depressed. If I'm angry, you made me do it. It's your fault, not mine. So all of these victim roles allow us to avoid being dominated. They allow us to control other people. They allow us to justify not taking responsibility for our lives. And they allow us to continue in the status quo of running our racket.
Right. So they're a way we protect ourselves.
We protect ourselves.
And we're still living as that scared little kid. So we go to these protective emotions.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And those emotions are so addictive. They're like a heroin addict, where most people aren't even aware that the emotions are running their lives. One of the exercises that we give in courses is to have people journal their upsets,
Right.
so they can actually start to look at what is the predominant emotional reactive state in the time of an upset that you go to. And that is a big red flag saying, Gail, you need to look at life differently. You need to reinterpret what just happened in a way where you're not a victim, where you actually get to take responsibility for your life, and you look for the gift in that situation, and you can communicate in a way where you can make the most of it, leaving the other person whole instead of becoming in conflict or retreating in sadness or whatever that might be.
I love how you shared, so those are low self-esteem emotions, and you also share shifting to high self-esteem emotions, the gratitude, the empathy, and forgiveness. We could have whole courses on that, but I just think it's really important to point out that when you find yourself in a low self-esteem emotion, that you can consciously choose to go to a high self-esteem emotion. What can I be grateful for? The empathy, the person that hurt you, as you've described in your book, the person that hurt you, how can you walk in their shoes and why they might have behaved that way? And then the forgiveness, which again is another high self-esteem emotion. I just wanted to share those because to give people an opportunity to shift when they find themselves in low self-esteem emotions, which is many people these days, as we know in this world.
In those times of upset, when you're in the soup, so to speak, you're going to be not totally aware originally of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
We all have the tendency, unless we develop the habit of recognizing what's going on, recognizing the emotional reactive state,
Mm-hmm.
giving up our right to be angry, giving up our right to be sad or afraid or anxious, and working out of our commitment in that moment, because we're all committed to something. Most of us are committed to our convenience.
Well, I love what you just said, that most of us live a path of convenience, what is familiar, versus and changing, shifting by being conscious and intentional, right?
Yeah. When we act deliberately and act from our commitments, we gain clarity. That's how we can live in a way that honors our values and how we can avoid making bad decisions. So as kids are growing up, if they get clear about what are they committed to, they're not going to hang around with kids that are into violence or gangs.
Right.
They're not going to take drugs or abuse alcohol because they're clear about what they're committed to.
Mm-hmm.
When kids are in development as are adults, they have the ability to let life train them. Incident becomes a learning opportunity. What is life teaching you in this moment? Who are you being that is supporting you, and who are you being reactively that does not? And what might it be like in the other person's world to have them say or do what they did in such a way that you now can realize that 99% of an upset is about the person who's upset and only 1% about the person who's supposedly causing the upset.
That reminds me of Don Miguel Ruiz's Don't Take Things Personally, have 4 agreements, and how many of us do take things personally. And when you just gave that statistic, 99% isn't about us. That's pretty interesting. Before we get into helping parents and educators and students integrate a greater sense of self-esteem, how do you see the difference between worthiness and self-esteem? How do you distinguish the difference?
I hold worthiness as one of several components of high self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And a high self-esteem individual contains at least 5 other components that would support them moving forward to live the high self-esteem life.
Could you share those 5, please?
The first is personal power, and that's our ability to influence others. When we have personal power, people listen to us, and we are able to impact their lives, and we know it.
Mm-hmm.
The second is significance, and that's our ability to be accepted and have the affection and the love of other people and to give that in return. When we feel significant and worthy, as you mentioned, then we operate from a different paradigm. And that paradigm is that it's all good and that we are doing the best that we know how to do, and we're learning and growing every day, and other people do the best that they know how to do,
Sure.
even when that is not good behavior that we can condone.
Mm-hmm.
The third is virtue. Virtue is about feeling as though you're a good person or a bad person, that you're worthy. And it's high self-esteem individuals have self-compassion so that when they make mistakes, which we all do, they learn from their mistakes, they forgive themselves, and they move on with the commitment to do better in the future. The fourth element is competence, and that's our ability to take a thought and to move that thought into reality, into manifestation with velocity. So we can actually create the life that we dream of. When we have competence, we believe in ourselves. We know that we can have whatever we want: good health, abundance, rich relationships, fun, passion,
Right.
everything that we want in our lives, fulfilling work. It's all part of that ability to have the idea and turn that idea into reality. And here's the fifth component that's so essential that most people miss. It's the ability to put yourself in the shoes of the other person and act in accordance to the golden rule, which is do to others as you have them do to you. Now, someone who has high ego, a Putin or a Hitler, for example, they might have self-esteem from another definition, but not by mine, because someone who has high self-esteem honors other people. They don't abuse other people for their own gain. So that's a critical component. And when we can develop high self-esteem kids to show them that we don't condone bad behavior by other people, but we're not at the effect of it. So all of these 5 critical areas are embodied in the action and the mindset of kids as they grow into adulthood.
Right. I just want to go back to one of them that you talked about that seems to be related to a lot what's happening in the news, and that is we all make mistakes. So how much do you believe that perfectionism, I know you talk a little about that in your book, impacts somebody's self-esteem, the drive to be perfect? And then when they're not perfect, they feel like a failure, because none of us are perfect, but especially these athletes that are outperforming now, and when they get injured and they can't perform, and that's been some of the recent suicides. Can you talk a little bit about perfectionism and how it starts in childhood, or where it starts, and how it can be?
As a child, we look around us and we see people who are smarter than us, people who are prettier or more handsome than we are, people who are better athletes, people who are more abundant and have it all and can get whatever they want, people who are just charismatic and just great with other people. And so we tend to compare ourselves against the standard of perfection. And we always come up short because we don't know what it's like in the world, really. We don't know that the great athlete might have terrible social skills, or he might be terrible, or she might be terrible, at math or in English or whatever it is. So this whole standard of perfectionism is a myth. And when people live from the mistaken notion that they have to be perfect, then they set themselves up for failure. And when they expect other people to be perfect, it's a situation where they're soon going to fall off their pedestal because no one can be perfect. So the thing to teach kids is to strive for excellence, to be better today than you were yesterday, to learn from your experiences and your mistakes so that you're always striving to be a little bit better. You're in personal development. Embrace the concept of personal development, knowing that there's so much out there to learn. Right. And that you're going to give up your right to beat yourself up when you make a mistake. You're going to give up your right to feel terrible when you're imperfect, but you're going to say, this is another gift for me because I just learned something today that I didn't know yesterday. Right. That will make me a better, more evolved, more empathetic person.
So when kids believe there's something wrong with them, that they are less than, not enough, which is a common subconscious limiting belief, how can parents assist in changing that?
I've identified 31 significant ways that parents can impact kids' lives. And I've read a book and created this highselfesteemkids.com. So let me read to you just a few of those ways.
Oh, that'd be excellent. Yes, thank you.
So one is to support children to see the other person's perspective. So to take the focus off of themselves and to know that they can be 10 feet tall and bulletproof, knowing that people don't do things to them, they just do things. Another one is to set the example for forgiveness. So here's a good point too, that as parents, if we aren't able to show by our example, children aren't going to listen to what we say. So how have you modeled that, whatever you want your children to learn? Forgiveness is a good example. Are you showing forgiveness? Teach children to be grateful, expanding that gratitude, living every day as though it's Thanksgiving Day, living every day as if you're pre-paving more blessings to come because your focus is not on what's wrong, but on the blessings that you are so grateful for in your life. Having empathy and teaching children to have empathy for what it's like in the other person's world. So those are a few of the areas.
And there's 31 of them that they can look at in your book. So I'm excited to share that again later. But so with all the current events happening, so for now, if somebody doesn't have it and they're like, I know at 37, you went and did this
Yeah.
personal growth and development, and I've done my own work too, is before becoming a coach. But the teenagers that are feeling very sad, what can you do once they're teenagers and they're dealing with this enormous
There's a 3-step system that I created in my high self-esteem adults.com program.
sadness?
Those 3 steps are: heal and complete your past, do a proper assessment of what's in your life right now, and design your future and choice.
I know clearing the past, usually that's done with some professional help, is it not? I think it's important. And I know in my work that the child or the parent feels witnessed because they weren't witnessed as a young child for some of their pain.
Certainly, a great counselor or a coach can be very helpful. And the books and the courses that I've written support people to go back and do these exercises where they can identify their emotional reactive state that we spoke of before.
Right.
They can look at what values were dishonored early on in life that need to be fulfilled for them to be happy and to be in communication and to live a fulfilled life. They can look at what principles need to be manifest in their life for their life to work. So there's lots that can be done in a way where they can reinvent themselves. They can heal their past by looking at the upsets, if they can remember them, where they separate out what happened from what they interpreted about the facts of the episode. Then they can look at how it made them feel, their emotional reactive state. They can see how that doesn't support them. They can agree to give up their right to be a victim, to be angry or sad or afraid or anxious. And they can create new interpretations and empower them to move forward. So that's just one way. That's one of a dozen exercises that can do to heal their past.
Sure. One of the things I find very helpful right now in the world is to help clients with a vision board, and not a typical vision board, you're just pasting pictures, but based on neuroscience, you're putting the words "I am worthy" on there, shifting the focus off of circumstances and bringing it back to your internal power. When you're charged, like when you get triggered, if you're a kid in high school and you just got bullied or heard of a bully and you're getting triggered, how can you center back in your power in that moment? I understand doing the historical work is really important in building a foundation, but when you get triggered in a moment and you're a high school kid,
Yeah.
what would you do?
When you're bullied, first take a look at what is it like in the world of the bully that someone would act and do such terrible things to another person. And is it possible that person was bullied? Is it possible that person was mistreated or abused by their parents or by someone else, and that they're just so angry on the inside? So you get to look at having some empathy for what it's like in the other person's world. The other question to look at is, who am I being that I'm a target of bullies? Not like it's your fault or you're to blame, but you can ask yourself, just like trying on a jacket, to see if there's something missing that, if put into place, would support you in your relationships and your communication with people. And there's no shame. A lot of kids, high school kids, younger kids, they feel as though when they're bullied, they have to keep it to themselves because it's a great embarrassment that you couldn't take care of yourself. I know that's how I felt as a 5-year-old. I couldn't defend myself against these teenagers. Instead of holding it back, as you are a caring parent or teacher or a counselor or someone who supports children, you have the ability to communicate with children in a way where they know that they can trust you, that they can share with you, and that there's no problem too big for them to come to you with. So if someone's being bullied, hopefully these kids have trusted advisors, trusted parents, people that they can share with openly. They can work to put an end to this problem so they can make sure that the child has appropriate counseling. The bully has appropriate counseling. They can make sure that it doesn't happen again and that there are safeguards put into place. And so it becomes a learning experience.
I'm just curious if you've noticed any consistent behaviors that do attract. Is there a way somebody's acting that attracts a bully?
Bullies go after people who they can dominate. So if you are a doormat, if you are afraid to stick up for yourself, if you are afraid to defend yourself, you're afraid to get help where help is required. Those are all great targets for bullies because they know they can dominate. If you are someone who has doesn't belong, someone who is out of the mainstream, then you're a target of bullies because you're different.
So if a child knows that right now, some child's listening right now, or a high school kid knows that it knows they're out of the mainstream, how can you encourage them to stay empowered to be their unique self outside of the mainstream?
They can develop friendships with people that they can relate to because everyone isn't mean and cruel. Everyone isn't a bully.
Mhm.
So they can develop supportive groups. They can develop support groups with parents and teachers and counselors. They can also get clarity about the fact that a bully's actions are 99% about the bully. So they can not take them personal, even though it sounds awfully personal when
Right.
you're being bullied, when you're being abused physically, mentally, verbally, whatever way the bully is bullying you. So you can remind yourself that the bully is acting out of the best that he or she knows how to do to defend themselves.
And the bully has low self-esteem.
They have low self-esteem. And if they had high self-esteem, remember the fifth component, acting out of the golden rule, do to other people the way you'd want them to do to you. So that's a key component, that there's something going on in that bully's world that you're unaware of, and have some compassion for the bully because they're really messed up.
So what advice do you have for parents today with the challenges? I know I was interviewing a behavioral therapist with kids, and one of the things that they're seeing, some of the data she has, is that some of these young children, 4 years old, are regressing. A 2-year delay in social emotional development as a result of the pandemic, increased compulsive disorders.
Yes.
And also, sadly, they're hearing 8 to 10-year-olds with a lot more suicidal thoughts.
Yes.
So I think the parents today of the young kids have enormous stress right now, having to juggle all that they're dealing with, but also the kids. What advice would you give parents to help nurture these children into high self-esteem during these early years?
Well, it's more critical now than it ever has been in the history of the world for parents to be on top of their game.
Right.
And parents can't be on top of their game if they are not in development themselves.
Right.
So set the example for your children. Take courses like the High Self-Esteem Kids course, the High Self-Esteem Adults course. So you actually have the ability to give the tools to your children to help them to work through these things. So the pandemic has set a lot of people back, a lot of kids back, but it's not irreversible. That's the good news. The good news is that through a commitment to personal development, through a commitment to letting life train you, we can look at all the things that we learned during the pandemic as things that we can learn during times of stress, during times of traumatic trouble in the world and in our lives personally. And we can use each opportunity to become stronger, to become more evolved, to become more able to be responsible, to live our life purpose. Kids don't even know that they can have a life purpose, as do most adults.
Right.
And so they wander aimlessly about their lives, not knowing that they can have a vision for every aspect of their lives, that the qualities that they want to be known for, the being qualities, the things that they'll do on a regular day at play or at work or whatever at school, the things that they'll have in their lives and the people that they'll contribute to and the causes that they'll contribute to.
Right.
Gail Jones is a nationally recognized worthiness coach and also certified as a high self-esteem coach for parents, educators, students, and young children. She is offering a unique 6-session coaching package for parents and educators on building a new foundation of elevating your life and helping your kids do the same with the highest levels of self-esteem and worthiness. She is also available to teach at your school, office, or other organization. To learn more, check out her website at claimyourworthiness.com or on Facebook and Instagram at Coach Gail Jones. You can also email her at gailjones@claimyourworthiness.com.
Do you think there's too much pressure on kids today to perform?
Yeah, they're pressured because they have interpretations about what happens when they fail. And that's that one key item there, teaching kids that there is no such thing as failure. There's only experience, and there's learning from that experience. And that's a success. So when you compete, you try out for the Little League team and you get cut, you didn't make it, as I didn't. I made up all these things about myself because I didn't make the team. I had other skills. I had other things that I could and did excel at, as does every child. So it's important for the parents, for the teachers, and the counselors to not let the children go wild in let their self-talk. There's a difference. One of the principles we can teach kids is to listen to their intuition, which is based in love, and it's totally different from listening to their negative self-talk.
Right.
The negative self-talk has two primary reasons for being. One is to make them feel like they're worthy when they don't think that they are. And the other is to keep trying, to keep on that treadmill, keep going even though you feel like you're never going to get there. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy when you think you're not good enough, because no matter what you do, you can never get to that standard of perfection. So teaching kids to strive for excellence, to give up their need to be perfect.
I love excellence over perfection. That's a really beautiful focus. Yes.
Yeah. So there's lots of different things that adults can do to support children to get over all of these thoughts that lead to suicide. A child who commits suicide thinks there's no hope for me. There's no getting out of this mess. I'm fatally flawed, so I might as well end it all. They don't realize that it's a growth process. So if they know that this too shall pass and that this is a learning experience, how have you become a wiser, more empathetic, more knowledgeable person out of this experience? And that doesn't mean we're condoning the bad behavior of other people, but that tells kids that there's hope. This is just a process of learning and growing. And
right.
I need to create an interpretation such as the one that I've created since about being bullied at 5 years old, that it was the greatest gift of my life. Because had I not been through that experience and reinterpreted the fact that those kids didn't really want to hurt me, they were just teenagers not knowing what they were doing, but they gave me a gift, because had I not gone through that experience and realized what it was like to be on the downside of low self-esteem, that I wouldn't have ever gone into this area of development so that I could support other people to develop their own self-esteem. So I'm so grateful that they were there that day.
I also think helping kids focus on what would my life look like if I knew I was worthy is really empowering, because it's so easy to look at circumstances again versus your dreams. Like you said, they're not told to look for a purpose or a vision, and how important that is. And I know you talk a lot about that. But let's ask, what are the good habits that support happiness and success for children? The habits.
There are so many habits. Let's start from the top down. I talked about life purpose. We all have a life purpose, and it stems from something that we're naturally talented at, something that we're known for, something that we love to do, that we do for the next 400 years, even if we weren't paid for it, because we just love it so much. So when we know that we can pursue our life purpose and go into work that is a reflection of that life purpose, we now have a meaning and something to strive for in life, so we don't end up doing things that we regret later. When we operate for that life purpose, we now then go to the next layer of the umbrella, which is to create a vision for every aspect of our lives. The qualities that we'll be, the things that we'll do, the things that we'll have, people that we'll contribute to. And in all 6 key areas of life: our health and wellness, our relationships, our abundance and prosperity, our work, the area of personal and spiritual development, and the area of having fun and recreating and pursuing our passions.
So when you have the students or the clients or the parents do a vision board or create a vision, do you have them do a vision board for each of those areas, or do you have them one board with all of those?
I have them write a written vision that encompasses a paragraph for each area of their life that's important to them. So each of those 6 areas, the qualities that they want to be known for, that they'll put there, the things that they'll do in a typical day when they're living their life, their dream life, the people and the causes that they'll contribute to, the causes that are important to them, because we want to teach children that it's not just about you and your selfish interests. It's about you getting your values honored as you support others with the gifts and the qualities that you can contribute to the world. So it's an interrelated society that we have here where people will contribute to you and you're going to look for the gift in every person that you meet. Everyone has something to contribute to you, even the bully. And you're going to look at how you can contribute to others, every person that you meet.
So much of your teaching is really focusing on optimism.
It's all empowerment. It's all about knowing that it's all good if you hold it that way, because we are wired such that if we have a positive expectation for life, in every area of life, we develop the self-motivation that's required for us to be in action to do the things that will cause us to achieve the things that we want. And if we see things as horrible, we self-sabotage because that self-motivation is absent and we think that it's hopeless.
So that a person has to have positive expectation to get motivated to take the actions.
Yeah, without the positive, if you see your future as worse than your current state, there's no self-motivation there. So why bother? And that's the lie. So when you're self-motivated because you see things as being better, so you create that empowerment moment by moment. Okay, who am I being that this is showing up around me as a chronic condition? And what's missing that if put in place would support me to break out of this, have a breakthrough? So we're constantly teaching kids how to have insights about what they're learning in life and breakthroughs. Breakthrough is an aha experience. What you didn't know. And that's where a coach or a counselor or parent or teacher comes in.
Right. A lot of us weren't taught. We didn't have parents teach us and they didn't have parents teach them. So this is really building a new generation of high self-esteem kids. It's an exciting time to think that we can recreate high self-esteem kids in a new world that's unfolding.
We really need it. Instead of teaching kids, okay, we're going to teach you the skills that you need to. Everybody has magnificence at their core. Everybody is different. So we're going to teach you to identify the things that you can be passionate about so that you can go out and contribute those gifts to the world and be paid because you're contributing to others. That's what value is and abundance is being generated that way. When you feel as though you're hopeless, now the hope is needing to give you things because you can't get them for yourself, and that's the lie.
And that's the point. That's the point when you want to shift from those low self-esteem emotions to the high self-esteem emotions of gratitude, empathy, and forgiveness. To don't go down that rabbit hole.
In addition to that vision, there's two other components that are critically important. The vision alone won't do it. Problems will show up, and you're going to let go of that vision if you don't have two things. One is a daily action plan that is written to support the manifestation of every component of your vision.
Right.
The second is a personal development plan, because if you're not in development, you're going to take action, you're going to fail, and you're going to quit. Because why?
Right.
I tried it. I'm not smart enough. I'm not charismatic enough.
Right.
Whatever your excuse is.
Right.
If you're in development, you're going to let life train you to look at what's missing that could be put into place to support you to break through all of your obstacles. You're going to know that every obstacle that comes in your way is a gift that brings you a little bit closer to a breakthrough. And so those two components, if you learn nothing other than the value of personal development in children and adults' lives today, then this hour that we're spending together will be worthwhile.
Right. And it should be taught in schools as life skills.
It absolutely should.
They should be starting the vision board and as soon as they can, what inspired actions. I love that you mentioned the actions too, because a lot of the law of attraction has been misleading to a lot of people. One, I think, first of all, you have to believe you're worthy of your vision. So you have to start at the core and you have to take the inspired actions. You can look at that board 7 to 10 minutes a day as it's told, but if you don't take the actions and then make the corrections when the actions don't work.
Yeah, it's delusion to think that your vision is going to manifest on its own.
In closing, Joe, let's just go over a little bit about your vision and your challenge for our viewers today.
My vision is to impact the lives of 20 million children and 20 adults.
It's amazing.
And I can't do it alone. So out of coaching with one of my coaches, I've developed these programs, High Self-Esteem Kids and highselfesteemadults.com, where we certify parents, grandparents, teachers, regular people to learn the principles to impact their own lives, impact their families' lives, and impact their kids' lives.
Mm-hmm.
And teach these principles to others as a certified coach if they're so inclined.
Right.
So my challenge is this can either be an interesting conversation or you can take some action where you follow a commitment to do something that's going to manifest the result that you want in your life when it comes to your children, when it comes to yourself, when it comes to elevating your worthiness, your self-esteem, your ability to have your best life so that you can be most abundant, most fulfilled, love your work, live with passion, travel, surround yourself with all the things that are important to you and contribute to the things that matter the most to you in the world. So my challenge is, if you would join our team of light bearers, highselfesteemkids.com, teaching kids these principles, highselfesteemadults.com, teaching adults or learning the principles for yourself and for the people you love. Join our team, because the only way I'm going to reach my goal of 20 million kids and 20 adults being impacted is if you impact people who impact people. And that's my challenge.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you. I hope our listeners take you up on that challenge. So thank you for sharing your expertise and vision with us today. Again, listeners can learn more about Dr. Rubino's life-changing work in championing people to restore their self-esteem at theselfesteembook.com and receive the free, insightful audio program, 7 Steps to Soaring Self-Esteem, and a 1-year free subscription to the Success Achievers Club, all of which is $129 value. You can also check out his work at highselfesteemkids.com.
Thank you so much, Gil. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it was a delight. Thank you. Thank you for joining me on our journey today. I am so grateful you are part of my podcast community, where it is my dream that by claiming our worthiness together, we can more impactfully shed our light and love on this world. In future podcasts, I'll be sharing more stories of hope and unlimited possibilities for creating anew. You can also follow me on Instagram or on my Facebook page. I also hope you'll be inspired to share my podcast with your friends. Together, we are stronger. Blessings, Gail.
Instagram and Facebook at Coach Gail Jones.